Hey guys, what's up? It's been a month and a half, or maybe not a month and a half, little over a month. What's up? Already doing bad with the vlog thing in 2017. Yeah, not going so great so far. Hopefully we're gonna fix this. No promises though, but Christmas decorations still up. Like I mentioned over a month ago, they're still here. They're mostly off now, thankfully. They're not really overly as extravagant, but they're still there. And like I said, they'll probably be up all year round. We're just not good at taking decorations down. It's just not something we prioritize, and Christmas is amazing, so who gives a shit? But it was his birthday. He's sitting on me because he just insists on it. Toddy. Toddy's officially 4 years old. And we've had this little guy since 2013 already. Holy crap. And we had a whole little birthday party for him and everything. And the sloth is still hungover from that. But things have been happening. I'm just going to try to cover a few of the major stuff, the major things like, you know, Logan, X-Men figures done, Guardians, stuff like that. So if I don't talk about something you wanted me to talk about, well, I apologize. Maybe next vlog, if there will be one within the next month. Hopefully there will be. Anyway, stuff! Logan. Okay, so Logan came out. Saw the movie opening night, even though I didn't think I would be able to. You guys probably know all this if you saw the showcase video, or at least the X23 showcase, and it was amazing. Dark as hell, even darker than I thought it was going to be, masterfully put together, but so damn grim and without hope until the very end that I was just like emotionally torn the whole time. Like after the second act, I was just stressed out more than I thought I was going to be, and my god, it was just so dark. I feel like it had to have been in an alternate universe, even though director James Mangold and a lot of other sources say otherwise. So yeah, Logan, insane and incredible last performance as the character on Hugh Jackman's part. The performances by everyone, even the girl Daphne Keane playing X23, my god. I mean, some incredible performances in Logan. So yeah, I mean, damn, it's going to be a little bit before I think I can handle watching that again. But I did end up making Logan and X23 since the last vlog, and there they are. You've probably seen them and the showcase by now, and they are officially in the books, done, and I'm super happy with both of them, and you probably already saw the showcases. I'm talking about old news at this point, but the X-Men Apocalypse figures are officially done and showcased on my channel. I just did a hard cut because it is now 2 in the morning because my mom and sister both walked in, but that's not the point. The point is, after a year almost of working on the X-Men figures on and off and so many failed deadlines, I finally finished them in this past month and got the video up on my channel. And it is so satisfying after all this time to finally have them all finished and just sitting on my desk, done, and also in the books, because, oh my god. You watch this channel, you know how long I was putting those figures off and how things just did not work out. That is the last time that I fully promised a showcase, because stupid Ross in 2016 was like, yeah, I can probably still get that showcase, all those figures done in showcase before I have to do Suicide Squad, and it's March 2017. Yeah. Anyway, my next project, now that X-Men is finally done and over, and even though I still have people asking where are Archangel, where is Beast, where's Weapon X Logan, it's like, yeah. Anyway, Guardians of the Galaxy figures have officially begun production. It's pretty great. And now I'm moving on to my first major project of 2017 that I will hopefully have done before release, even though Celebration is going to be falling like right there in the 3rd week of April. So that's why I'm starting now instead of like April 1st or something. And just giving myself a month. I'm trying to give myself like, I basically still do have a month because you factor in Celebration. I'm losing like 10 days to that. When me and Joe, 111 Brick Reviews, are going down to Celebration, it's going to be 10 days out of April. So 10 days where I cannot work on the Guardians. So that's why I'm starting now. Anyway, so what have I done with the Guardians? Well, first I posted the first like announcement teaser behind the scenes photo thingy on the social medias, because I did fully paint and complete Star-Lord's helmet, and it turned out pretty great. Definitely a step up from the one that I did like 3 years ago. And you know what else is a step up from what I did like 3 years ago? The thing that I painted in between the first take of this vlog and then the hard cut that we are now on, and that is the fade of Gamora's hairpiece. It turned out pretty cool, man. Obviously all of this is just early early starts on the figures. I don't really have a lot to show yet, but I have started. Bricklink orders are in for certain parts that I'm missing and components that I need to make them, but we're rolling hard on Guardians now from now until the end of April, and that's gonna be it. It's gonna be pretty crazy. 9 figures in total planned for the showcase, so yeah. Anyway, we'll have more to talk about with Guardians like next vlog. But Iron Fist was a thing that happened, and you know, I mean, I knew Iron Fist was coming in March, but then like I think it came out March like 17th or 19th, one of those 2 dates, and then suddenly I was like, oh, I was just on Netflix. Honestly, I think I was looking at Clone Wars episodes and there was Iron Fist. And by the way, the Clone Wars stayed on Netflix. That's pretty great. But yeah, then there was Iron Fist. I was like, oh, that's out. And so I sat there and I watched it. You know, well, it took me like 3 days to get through it because I was doing other stuff. But yeah, I finally got through Iron Fist, and I heard about all the reviews on Metacritic or whatever, or Rotten Tomatoes, and I was like, oh, critics are funny. Because yeah, the show isn't perfect. It's not the best out of all 5, including it, that have been released thus far, but there's no reason for that kind of criticism. I mean, that's too rough. The series is pretty damn great, and I'd recommend it to anyone. But 13 episodes of Iron Fist, and him not being in a costume will unfortunately still not result in a custom figure of him until the Defenders. I will make all of them when the Defenders drops later this year. But no promises. We will see how it goes. Because after the X-Men, like I said, no promises. Again, we'll just see what happens. But yeah, so I'm going to talk about Twin Sons and the whole Maul thing, and how they concluded his story pretty soon. But first we're going to talk about Thor Ragnarok leaks, which I'm not going to show because there have been DMCA takedowns left and right, and I mean, I could show them on my screen, but I'd rather just talk about them, and if you really want to see them, then feel free, that's your call. But everything looks pretty standard, except we get a pretty awesome new Thor helmet and a pretty fantastic headpiece for Hela. And looking at both of those things, I'm just like, that is awesome. And the Hulk Big Fig, also awesome. And I cannot wait to, you know, make that series of figures. It's going to be pretty crazy because right after Brick Fair, it's going to be a straight shot to Thor Ragnarok and Justice League. And I'll be working on like 2 separate waves of figures. And again, we will see how that goes. Because one more time after X-Men, no promises. But in terms of other things to talk about besides all of that stuff, we're pretty much out of things to talk about, so we're going to transition into Twin Sons and talking about this guy and how they concluded his story. And basically, you know, January we saw the first teaser for the second half of Rebels Season 3. We all knew Obi-Wan. And by the way, this is the part where I talk about Twin Sons for the rest of the vlog. And if you do not want to hear such things or see me awkwardly zooming in and out, then maybe you know, check out the X-Men showcase if you haven't already. That's a thing you can do. But yeah, from this point on, we're pretty much just going to talk about Twin Sons, and I'm going to express my opinions, and you do not have to agree with them. But yeah, so Twin Sons came out on Disney XD, and I caught it on their app because they post the episodes super early in the morning, and I was going to bed at like 6 a.m. I know, shut up. And I watched the episode, and I went in, you know, really wanting to appreciate it, knowing that even though I really unfortunately despise Ezra as a character, that I would still get a meaningful conclusion to such a major character in Star Wars history and in Star Wars canon, the Star Wars universe, period. But unfortunately, I was not nearly as satisfied with the episode as most people are. And I mean, it's because I think when watching the episode, you either fall on one of two sides. You either fall on the side of, no, I think that was meaningful and that accomplished everything it should have with the ultimate fate of Maul. And so spoilers for Twin Suns after this point, if you have not seen the latest episode of Rebels, which concludes the story of Maul, then yeah, maybe click off. This is probably a good time to do that too. But yeah, so I unfortunately fell on the side of being underwhelmed and disappointed, because I expected a much, I don't want to say a much different fight or a much different confrontation, but I expected it to be a bit more extensive. And let me preface this by saying I am fully aware of what they went for, what they were going for, and why people appreciate it for what it is. But personally, I just wanted it to go for a little bit longer, because I feel like this is such a Darth Maul, you know, formerly Darth, now just Maul, right? Major character in the Star Wars universe, and he's played such a pivotal role in the direction and the shape the universe took following the Phantom Menace. He was the first Sith to reveal himself to the Jedi in 1,000 years. He killed Qui-Gon. I mean, what would have happened if Anakin had been trained by Qui-Gon? Would the galaxy be different? Would there still be an empire? You know, he suffered 10 years on Lotho Minor, you know, eating creatures and people to survive and garbage, and then he came back and killed Satine. I mean, took over Mandalore briefly, caused a civil war on the planet. I mean, between such an incredibly, an incredible people, a rift between incredible people that are so focused on their warrior history, right? And then he came back 17 years later after Sidious intervened and upended his life again, killed his brother, and 17 years later, this was what he decided to do, and this was his ultimate end. And I mean, I'm okay with Maul dying. I really am. I just wish that it had been done differently. I was always the person saying, I wish that they would have just done this in a Obi-Wan Solo movie, because at this point there's no more material left for an Obi-Wan Solo movie. They just covered the most eventful thing to happen to him during his exile in a 22-minute episode of Disney XD Star Wars Rebels that focused so much on Ezra Bridger that it just wasn't even funny. I mean, it was 6 a.m. I was in bed. I was screaming into a pillow because of how disappointed I was. And of course, those were just my first initial rash thoughts of what I was seeing. And I really didn't want to not be able to appreciate it. But they just spent so much of the 22-minute episode with Ezra and Chopper. And I'm watching this. I'm watching Ezra go around the galaxy, go to Tatooine. And the more and more I hear Taylor Gray's performance as the character, the more he puts emphasis on things like the Sith holocron and all these different lines, the more I feel like he's just a Disney mascot going around the Star Wars universe. And I mean, I missed a large chunk of Rebel Season 2, but I have had no reason to believe that would have made me appreciate Ezra. Those episodes would have made me appreciate or could become more attached to Ezra than I already am not. So unfortunately, by the time Ezra does find Obi-Wan after Maul numerous times through the Sith holocron calls his name, I mean, that was hearing Maul in his final moments just saying Ezra. I was like, oh God. But then when he finally meets Obi-Wan, he just looked so out of place to me. I mean, Ezra and the way he was behaving, I don't know, he felt so out of place. And then thankfully, he wasn't involved in the final fight. He was not there, so I appreciated that. But then everything else that followed, I was just so let down by how brief it was. And before you jump into the comments and start talking about how it's you know, watch old samurai movies, you know, this was every Obi-Wan is a master of the Force and the definitive Jedi 17 years, you know, post Revenge of the Sith. You know, I get all that. I get that his moves would have been lethal and calculated, and they analyzed each other before the fight. I understand all of that. I really do. And so I want to give credit where it's due. Stephen Stanton voicing Ben Kenobi. I mean, I say Ben Kenobi because, you know, you get the distinction I'm trying to make there. Incredible. Stephen Stanton, I mean, amazing. He was amazing as Tarkin, and he's done an amazing Obi-Wan. And so, I mean, if they ever use Obi-Wan in an animated medium again, you know, Ben Kenobi, I hope that Stephen Stanton will continue to voice him. I am curious, you know, as to what James Arnold Taylor would have brought to it, but Stephen Stanton did an amazing job. The character model looking more like Ewan McGregor than Alec Guinness didn't bother me as much because they kept Obi-Wan so consistent to how he is 2 years later in A New Hope. So that really wasn't as big of a problem as I thought, him and his like 6-inch fingers that we originally saw in the first trailer. And that whole line of "you're in the wrong place," and then turns out that was "you're in the wrong place, Ezra Bridger," and I was like, oh, well, that line isn't as cool anymore. But yeah, so there was that, and I also really liked the setting. I liked the lighting that they were pulling off there. I mean, there were some cool moments, and the ending scene with Luke and how and then the binary sunset theme that followed. I mean, it brought back all the same feels that I had at the end of, that I've always had for the end of Revenge of the Sith. But then, you know, despite the ending scene being fantastic, despite Stephen Stanton giving an amazing performance, I was just really surprised at the Lucasfilm story group for underplaying and downplaying Maul's ability so much. And I know a lot of you will instantly say, Maul's much older now, he's started to lose his mind even more. It's been 17 years, he's been without purpose for all this time, nearly 2 decades. He's been wandering in Tatooine deserts for 2 days. But to that, I say earlier in his life, he spent 10 years as an animal on Lotho Minor, eating creatures and garbage and people, and came back all the better for it. I mean, he was calculating, he was calm and calculating and collected in his plan to kill Obi-Wan, you know, all those years ago. And then to think that 17 years of him still, you know, being sane and well, relatively okay. I mean, you cut to the Rebels season 2 finale when he first reveals himself. He's doing all right, man. He's in good shape. I mean, mentally, he's all there. And so I don't understand why 2 days of him wandering in Tatooine would take such a toll on him, to where he would walk into a fight with the man who upended his life. I mean, obviously, that's Palpatine, who really destroyed Maul's life, but, you know, Obi-Wan also had a key role in it, right? And so why would he go in so unprepared? Everyone's talking about how great this is because it was so consistent and so perfect and captured Obi-Wan so perfectly, and, you know, I get that, but I just feel like they didn't capture Maul perfectly, because Maul was trained by Palpatine, by Darth Sidious. I mean, the Sith who ultimately took over the galaxy for 2 decades. I mean, Maul was not just trained by any other Jedi Master. I mean, Maul is a cold, calculating assassin and always has been. Yes, he's been met with failure after failure through all of the 30 years he's been active since Phantom Menace, because obviously you can't count the 10 years of him being on Lotho Minor. So, I mean, but ever since, it's like, you know, we saw what he did after getting pulled from Lotho Minor and coming back into the galaxy, but what has he been doing for the past 17 years to where he would be so unprepared to face Obi-Wan again? Obi-Wan doesn't have to be the only one who's been honing his skills and speaking to Qui-Gon through the Force. You know, why hasn't Maul been, you know, this fight made it seem like Maul wasn't as prepared. You know, he it made it seem like he's been doing nothing for 17 years to prepare for such a confrontation, because Obi-Wan took Maul out like he was just any other Inquisitor. And a lot of people will say Maul was so overcome with rage, that's why he was so blinded. But they're not samurais. They have the Force. you're talking about two figures in the Star Wars universe that changed galactic history between the two of them. I mean, major key players, and so when one is done justice but the other isn't, I can't help but be let down by it. I mean, Maul would have been more prepared than that even after 2 days of being in the deserts of Tatooine. Even if he is in his 50s now, clearly he's aged pretty damn well. I just don't agree with most people that this was, you know, such a meaningful send-off for Maul, and that this was it being done justice, because Maul's not just a character they brought back that should just be taken outside and put down. Maul has always been a meaningful character to me, and ever since I was exposed to him as a kid in watching Phantom Menace for the first time in like 2005, I think it was, to my first Sith Infiltrator in 2006, to my first, you know, Maul minifigure that I got from that set. I mean, all the way to when he was brought back in the Clone Wars. Maul has been a major character for me, and I've always loved his character in Star Wars canon. I've never been one of those people who was like, he was so underused in the Phantom Menace, he was always a villain of the week. No, he was never that to me. Maul was always a lot more than that. I always appreciated and cherished how great of a villain he is. But then to have his story ended like this after 18 years of, you know, being an active character. I mean, to the people that were young enough to watch the Phantom Menace, and you know, I want to know the minority of people that did enjoy the Phantom Menace in 1999 and, you know, are old enough to remember those times and their first time seeing Maul on the big screen. What was it like for them, man? You know, what is it like for those people that do remember seeing the Phantom Menace and do have appreciated Maul ever since, to have his story concluded like this? Because not only was it too fast, but I feel like the character model didn't help either. I mean, you have his eye, like the Sith eyes are really odd looking, and the jaw is just so unbelievably thin, and I just don't understand how they've gone this far from the greatness they were maintaining in the Clone Wars, because apparently Dave Filoni himself directed and wrote this episode. And I mean, what's really bad with the writing with Rebels, and I've said this before a few times, is, I mean, they wrote themselves into a corner from day one, right? Because you have this group of rebels that they are so strictly following through the events of the early days of the Galactic Civil War before it officially breaks out. And that's what the Clone Wars did not do. They did not tie themselves down to constantly having to rely on following Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka. They went to all the parts of the galaxy, all parts of the Clone Wars, and so many different places with or without Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka. But this show follows the Ghost Crew so strictly that Ezra was just forced into this story. I mean, just shoehorned in, and it felt so wrong, because Ezra is just not a character that I think really had any place here at all, personally, and that's just my opinion. But I mean, so when they take a character like Maul and downplay him this much, and this is his conclusion after all these years, I was just pretty let down. But I'll tell you what I wasn't let down by. I like how he was killed. I think it's a bit of a stretch that he would be using the same move that he used on Qui-Gon all the way into the far future, 30 years later. Granted, he's only been active 20 of those years. But really? He would have tried the Qui-Gon move that quickly? I think that should have been a finishing move that ultimately got him killed, instead of it being one of his first. And that's again where a lot of you will go back to how enraged he was, how mentally unstable he was. But Maul's more than that. Maul is better than that. Maul would not have just lost himself like that. He would have been more collected and calculated, and he would have analyzed Obi-Wan in the same way Obi-Wan analyzed him. He would have been ready. He would have been able to hold his own longer than that. I didn't want a flashy fight. I didn't want a major, you know, force-sensitive blowout of a fight. I just wanted a few exchange of lightsaber blows. I just wanted a small exchange of lightsaber blows to last at least a minute before Obi-Wan finally did cut him down. That's all. I mean, maybe Maul could have leapt over him with the Force like once. Maybe a Force push could have been used somewhere. Nothing major. I mean, nothing that would make Obi-Wan inconsistent from the original trilogy. I didn't want anything like that. I just wanted Maul to be able to hold his ground a little bit longer than that. I wanted Obi-Wan and Maul to reference the events of the past, something from the Clone Wars, Qui-Gon, Satine, you know, what have you. But there was none of that. Instead, Maul's dying words were about both of them believing Luke to be the chosen one, which I thought was great. I thought those were great dying words for him. You know, he will avenge us. I thought that was really, really cool. But that was it. You know, and that's why I was let down, because I like how they handled the fight, but I just feel like I got half of what I was expecting for such a monumental moment in these two characters' lives. Maul's final stand and Obi-Wan having this devilish Zabrak or Zabrak. I've never known how to pronounce it. I've always pronounced his species as Zabrak. Coming for him in the night to potentially, you know, totally ruin everything he's been protecting for the past 17 years in exile. So I was disappointed. Maybe you weren't. But I figured I needed to take this time to talk about it because Maul has been such an important character and such an amazing villain for me, you know, for the past, what has it been, 12, 13 years almost that I've loved Star Wars of my life. And so to have his story conclude in such an abrupt and, you know, what felt like such a forced manner, you know, it was really disappointing to me, and that's just me. And then usually I tend to have the unpopular opinion. You've probably already posted your comments by now, and a lot of people have probably not even stayed to listen to me for this long, but to those of you who have, I do appreciate it. And like I said, I just feel like this character has been so special to me that I needed to take the time to discuss how they ultimately went about ending his story, because I really just don't agree with most people on this one. So to me, what's canon is Maul did one day come back for Obi-Wan, and Maul did meet his fate in attempting to do so. But, you know, what isn't canon to me is Ezra being so heavily involved, you know, the fight being so, or it's not even a fight, the confrontation being so quick. And that's all of that really just doesn't feel canon to me, even though it's 100% canon now. It's kind of like in the same way I still consider the Plagueis book, the Old Republic, Republic Commando to all still be canon. It's kind of like in the same way I still consider those to be canon, I don't consider certain parts of what I just watched over the weekend to be canon for this story. So, yeah, one other thing I think they missed out on was the use of Duel of the Fates. I think they should have had a hint of that playing in the background, and it would have brought back a lot, and it would have done a lot for this incredibly meaningful final confrontation between the two. But yeah, guys, ultimately I was let down, and you know, that's pretty much it. I think I've covered all the bases. I don't agree with how, you know, samurai inspired the fight was, because this is a incredibly beyond seasoned and experienced Jedi going against a former Sith and one of the most powerful dark side users to ever live, really. I mean, and granted, that might be an overstatement for Maul. The guy could never even use Force Lightning. He was never fully trained on purpose, but he was still one hell of a dark side user. I mean, he was. And so for his story to end that way, like I said, man, I was let down. Hopefully you didn't feel the same way. But regardless, I'm going to give the Rebels one more shot. I'm going to watch the finale, and if no justice is done to Grand Admiral Thrawn, if the season ends with him doing no real damage to the Rebel Alliance and he walks away from Season 3 having inspected a few speeder bikes and found one traitor, then I think I might be done with Rebels, because I think I've given this show enough chances. The show's not what I want it to be 3 seasons in, and so that's why I think I might finally jump ship and just check in very, very rarely, because I think at this point I've given the show too many chances with this season alone. So, yeah, I figured I would try to give you my opinions about this whole thing in a calm manner, rather than be exasperated about the whole thing, even though inside I I really am. But yeah, so this definitely made me question as to whether or not me and Joe will attend the Rebels Season 4 panel at Celebration, because I've pretty much lost most hope for this series. So, if there was any more. So, anyway, I think I've been going for like, I don't even know, it's been a while. I've been going for like 27 minutes already. This vlog is about half an hour long almost, but hey, it's been a month. There have been some things to talk about, and check it out. I got some pretty cool figures in the past month. Check out the Marvel Legends Groot. Finally got Revan, thanks to Corey from Making Star Wars, and all 3 of the new Marvel Legends Guardians, thanks to Eric from the Rogue Squadcast, who will also be at Celebration. So pretty cool stuff, man. And I will talk to you guys in the next vlog, when hopefully I've made a lot more progress on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 figures. And yeah, thanks for sticking around. I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.